Hello and welcome to the Metapod Podcast, Pokemon podcast that revolves around the evolving meta. We're in this week. We're in it to win it. We have a special episode this week because there's not a lot of news. See, we planned ahead on this stuff. Apologize for missing last week with my traveling back across the entire United States and Sean just being a busy person. We were like, you know what? Let's relax. But Sean, after that relaxing, how are you doing?
I'm good. Yeah, it's the off season, right? That's where we're at right now.
There's like 2 months of nothing as the actual world qualifiers, prepare for worlds. And we're just like waiting for events to come back.
Yep, exactly. So, but I am good, Jake. Briefly before the pod, we talked about that fact that, you played some Pokemon this weekend, and I played some Pokemon this weekend, but it was not your usual Pokemon. Jake, what were you rocking?
Okay. I did play usual Pokemon. I just also played unusual Pokemon. I played twice last week.
Oh, dang. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I played twice last week, which was crazy. I played in a regular standard event. It was 5 rounds. I played Dialga. Dialga without Twilight Masquerade thought, aside from Prime Catcher. I just threw in a Prime Catcher and
seems good.
That was it. Like, because or wait, is the Metang's not from Twilight Masquerade, right?
No, Metang's been around for a minute.
Yeah, I just have the Prime Catcher in there. Went 3-2, beat Gardevoir and some other stuff. Man, it's been a couple days. I should have wrote all this down. Beat Gardevoir and a couple other things, and the people were nice, people were fun. The games that I won, it was crazy. The games that I won, I absolutely I did the Dialga thing. I said Star Chronos. I was whacking things. I was hot. And then the games that I lost, I didn't play a supporter at all.
Oh no! So it was everything or bust for you every game.
Yeah, I was literally the definition of a glass cannon, but it was a lot of fun, and I had fun. But Sean, before I yap about the other thing that I did this week, what did you do this week?
Well, I mean, I played in a GLC tournament.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I did. Go? It went well. We hosted it at our locals at my suggestion to our the person who runs our locals. We had, I want to say, like 12 players, 14 players, something like that, which for GLC is pretty decent, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I played a psychic deck. I played a psychic damage spread deck, like a psychic damage counter placement deck specifically.
Yeah.
And I did pretty well. I felt pretty good going into it. My first 2 rounds, I did well. It was 2-0. Jake, I'm just going to say I got out damage spread by an electric deck because I greedily did not play Bench Barrier Mew in my psychic deck. And I had never personally seen the Electivire, which for those of you listening who don't know, like me, who didn't know what Electivire was capable of, it is capable of mass destruction. It is 3 energy on a stage 1 in the Lightning GLC deck that does 50 damage to each of your opponent's Pokemon. So if you got a full bench, that's 300 damage for 3 energy that you're putting on board. And if you know anything about psychic decks in GLC, let's just say they're not the beefiest. They're not really tanky.
They promote spread damage, not knock something out in one hit damage,
Right. Like the most I can do in one turn damage wise to a single Pokemon is really Giratina doing 130, and Electivire has 140 HP. So I was having a great time with that. So that was my one loss. It was a pretty back and forth game. I had a slow start, they had a weird start. And then he was able to get off the Electivire. I lost that game, but then I went and came back and won the third. So I went 3-1 and got 3rd place, which it was pretty good. It was the first time I played in a proper GLC tournament. So
respectable, I would say. I also played GLC on Saturday. I think it was about Saturday. Played it over at Darkside. They had their first GLC tournament ever at the store, so wanted to go to that. Was able to go undefeated at Darkside with the Funny Man Wailord deck, my favorite and only GLC deck. that I will play. You play jumbo-sized Wailord, Sean. Do you know what that card does?
I mean, I know it's huge. It's just
Yeah.
absolutely a tank, and it hits for a lot of damage too, right? Because you're playing Frostmoth
Oh yeah. But
or
so Wailord,
Baxcalibur.
200 HP stage 1 Pokemon, 200 HP with jumbo size. It has an ability on it that takes 30 less damage from attacks. So if you want to one hit KO it, you have to do 230 damage effectively. It has one attack on it, special wave. It costs 4 energies, 3 water, 1 colorless. Does 120 plus 120 base damage no matter what if you fulfill the requirements, which is a good number overall. You just talked about how the Electivire has 140,
Yep.
so I don't have any damage modifiers in the deck, but if I did, could be able to reach that number more than likely at some point. But it does more damage, 120 more damage if it has a special energy attached.
Jeez, that's
So you just run special energies in the deck. You can run reversal energies, you can run splash energy, you can run whatever the
wash energy.
wash energy. Thank you. Yeah, you could play that one. You can play a couple different options in special energies for the big Wailord, and especially with splash energy. Do you remember what splash energy is?
Is that the one that comes back to your hand when the Pokemon gets knocked out?
Yes, if the Pokemon that the card is attached to gets knocked out, you put the Pokemon back in hand and discard all other cards attached to it. So you can string Wailords without having to use like Nessa as a supporter or Super Rod or anything like that, which is very, very nice. So I played the funny Wailord deck. I went 2-0 in there. I beat what did I beat the first round? I beat Psychic the first round. I think it was Lost Zone Psychic
Okay.
in
Yeah.
there. And then the second round I beat Colorless. And it was funny when I beat Colorless because the Psychic game wasn't close at all. I just did the Wailord thing. And it just worked out really well. But the second game, I had a slow start, which was tough. Like my turn 1 was pretty slow, and I knew I was going to have a pretty slow turn 2 and potentially turn 3, depending what I drew off of the Abyssal Hand Octillery. But my opponent turn 1 had a really good start. Like he laid out his entire
Oh
bench.
my
He had
gosh.
the Bidoof and the Squovit ready to go, right? But what I did was in my second turn, I played Hex Maniac. No abilities. Well,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. After you did your
abilities
good
of like,
things.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
After I did my like Abyssal Hand and stuff like that, I played Hex Maniac, and then he couldn't do anything. You can't Bibarel, you can't Squovit, right? You
Yep.
can't do any of that stuff. And so stalled him out for a turn right there. Come to my next turn, I still can't really do anything. So I played Versus Seeker to play Hex Maniac again and do the exact same thing. And then so he once again had another turn of just not doing anything. So then what I did after that was then I played Guzma to knock out his Bidoof when he only had one card in hand, and that one card was like Bibarel. So he was just
Oh
doing
no.
Squovit every turn. Yeah, and so I walloped him. So I like the Wailord deck. I like GLC because I get to play my one of full art supporters and have a pretty looking
Yeah.
deck.
No, that's nice. And I will say, I think my guess is that the Wailord water deck, and
Mm-hmm.
then there's a grass deck that you can just grass is so crazy and consistent. You have like things that can do a ton of damage with between Grottle and Rillaboom and whatever. It's Venusaur. It's just crazy. I think those are probably the two best decks
Mm-hmm.
types in the format. I don't know. Is there
Well,
one? There's a dragon deck that I know is pretty good too.
I would say that this specific Wailord is not the popular best
Okay.
version of water,
Okay,
truthfully.
fair.
I know that like Andrew Mahone and a lot of people at Full Grip, when they do the weekly like gym leader series challenge, collect all the badges. I know the most popular water deck is a different type of Wailord.
Okay.
But I prefer this Wailord. So
Hey, fair enough.
I will play my entire deck around this one Wailord.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. And
But
that's
that's the beauty of GLC.
yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I was like, that's the benefit, right? Like GLC, you don't
Mm-hmm.
have to be like super optimal because every game is gonna be a little different. Everything's a
Mm-hmm.
one of. You don't know. So yeah.
I'll post my list in the Discord for anyone who is curious, because it's not very hard to build either. Especially if like you can get the hardest thing to get, I think, is like the supporters.
Mm.
Um but you can get those pretty cheap as like moderately to lightly played commons
And I will
and
say,
uncommons.
if you want your league to run GLC events, you can also
Hmm.
just talk to the people at your league and be like, "Hey, are we cool with proxies? Like, we allowed proxies at our event."
Hmm.
So my deck didn't have proxies, but like other people's did, and I don't care. I'm like, yeah, if you, yeah, I would rather have more people if they learn about GLC, but they're like, oh, it's like 2 days away. Well, it's gonna be really hard to get some of these like older, kind of obscure cards in like 2 days. I would rather
Hmm.
than be able to print a piece of paper and stick it in a sleeve with an energy and call it that card than just not play. So another option.
I also want to give a quick shout out to Darkside, not only for, running the GLC locals, but I don't know if I've mentioned this on the podcast, but Darkside, which is one of my local shops, they started selling pre-made decks
Oh, that's
in
cool.
both standard and GLC. So like I don't know if they have any up right now, because I think they get bought actually like really quickly, but what they're doing is they're getting lists from people who play in these formats, right? They're taking lists from the major regionals, right? For standard. Like I think they just recently had Andrew Hedrick's Lost Box list
Hmm.
up for sale. And you buy it complete, it's minimum rarity, but it's a really easy way to just like, if you're looking for a deck but maybe you're not really interested in buying 60 cards all as singles on like TCG Player, it's a really easy way. So I just wanted to give a quick shout out to him. No,
No
whatchamacallit.
sponsorship. Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
no
I know.
sponsorship or anything like that. I just genuinely think it's a really good idea if you're a store that has a ton of bulk.
Yeah, no, it's a good shout out.
Hmm.
But Jake, before we get to our interview that we're going to be showcasing that I did at NAIC, we have one news topic that we're going to cover today. And that topic is all around the 2024 Pokemon TCG Illustrator Contest. So, for
Hmm.
those of you who, maybe didn't listen to the podcast or weren't around last year, you just don't remember, the Illustrator Contest is a thing that Pokemon in Japan has done, I think, a few years now, where they'll put out an open call for entries. People can then, create art based on a variety of optional Pokemon. So you can't do it on
Hmm.
anything. They'll give you a list of Pokemon that you can base art around. Then the artists make the art and they submit it, for consideration on a future card. But Jake, it looks like this year things have gone awry. What's going on with the Illustrator contest this year?
So people were very excited when the top 300 entries were announced for the Illustrator contest, especially people like you and I, right,
Yeah,
seeing it. But then once actual artists and people that are very fluent in art, right, not like us that scribble, barely can color in the lines, found out that there are several entries that are falsified or created by AI in a sense. When I say falsified, I'm not getting into the topic of whether you think AI is art or not. It's whatever. But when I say falsified, I mean someone that is doing multiple entries, putting in multiple names in different submissions and all being under AI art. It's really hard to tell, in my opinion, as someone who doesn't look at art, which one is like real and which one is AI, just because I don't have an eye. But you can look up different artist videos or explanations about why these specific cards are AI. And I think PokeBeach, in their article that they put out a couple weeks ago, labels a couple of those out. You can kind of see how, like, oh, that makes sense. Like, the anatomy of this does not make sense. Um,
yeah,
or like why would like water or a building or something look like this. So just different points like that. But the reason I wanted to bring it up is I don't know. I feel like we would have heard if the Pokemon Illustrator Contest specifically said not to use AI.
Hi, hello, it's me. Just making a quick little editor's note here in post editing. It's about 11 o'clock on Monday night, and I just saw this on Twitter. Wasn't around when we were recording earlier in the day, but it really spearheads some of the conversation that we had earlier. So I just wanted to give you all a quick update and the official thing before you hear us really talk about it and stuff. Pokemon has actually DQ'd several entries from the Illustrator contest in here that we talked about earlier. Now, I'm going to read you verbatim and show it on the screen for all you watchers out there. For you listeners, I'll read it to you real quick. We are aware that select entrants from the top 300 finalists of the Pokemon TCG Illustration Contest 2024 have violated the official contest rules. As a result, entrants in violation of the rules have been disqualified from the contest. Furthermore, additional artists participating in the contest will soon be selected to be among the top 300 finalists. We're committed to upholding the integrity of the Pokemon TCG Illustration Contest and appreciate fans' continued support as we celebrate the artistic abilities of the talented Pokemon community. So, couple of quick things in there to note. One, I really like that they actually said something. Pokemon has always been a company that has not been great at communicating, especially when it comes to the trading card game and the competitive community. So nice to see, although this isn't the competitive side of the card game, at least they're showing some communication in regards to what they're doing, apologizing in a sense as well for the stuff. The violation of rules is most definitely the multiple entries, right? You can only submit 3 entries per person, or 3 art pieces per entry per person. So a couple people that were submitting, like 6, 7, 8 under different various names, I think that's really what they're implying about the violation of the rules. And coincidentally, I believe, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong in the comments below, that a lot of the people that were doing these multiple illegal entries were also the AI creators, right? The people that created the illustrations from AI. So kind of knocking 2 birds with 1 stone. Obviously, they won't actually say what they, kicked people out for, but they'll keep it vague and we can only assume. We'll see, because they are re-evaluating the top 300 finalists, so they will eventually be re-releasing the top 300 finalists. So it's going to be on them, and it's going to be a really telling scene when they release the top 300 if there is still AI art inside of it or not, from maybe people that followed the number of entries rule but submitted AI. And so then we'll really see how Pokemon feels about AI art at that point. But I'll get back to the episode and us explaining a little bit, because there are some other couple good points about this that we bring up.
Right. I think we're at the day and age where, like, it would be said, and people review these documents, people review these entries, and so there's a couple different options that come out of it. Either the people that were reviewing the entries are not smart enough to recognize AI as artists, or they just don't care. Which I think both are very interesting, because if it's the one that they don't care, then we could definitely, I think, see AI cards in the future, like AI illustrated cards. But if they're just not, if they just didn't know that it was AI and they don't want AI, it's interesting because there has yet to be a statement, I believe, over the Illustrator contest.
Yeah, I mean, Pokemon, as of the article's time, has not issued a statement, like you said. I don't think they're going to. I mean, if you're Pokemon, right? It's not like you picked the winner and that the winner turned out to be AI. It's that you announced the 300 that have been like shortlisted, so to speak, of which there'll be 1 winner, 1 EX winner, and 1 grand prize winner of either style. So there'll be 3 cards that get turned into real promo cards. So
Mhm.
3 out of 300. I think that given that the community has sort of called all of these out, I whether or not it was in their rules that you should or shouldn't use AI, um, you know, the ones that used AI will definitely not be picked. They just won't, right? Like the Pokemon company doesn't want that smoke. They don't, and I think probably the people that will be running the contest internally, at least even if it's not on paper, are like, we're just not going to pick something that somebody may have used AI on because it's an Illustrator contest. It's for artists who make art. Whether or not, again, you think AI is art, I think there's just they want people to like draw these, right? And they don't want to turn
Mhm.
into, I don't know, Jake, if you saw all uh the stuff that's been going on with Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro.
No, I have not. I don't know what this is.
So Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro, they've like issued um statements. They've said that they're not going to use AI art on Magic cards, but then they were caught using AI art in promotional material, like advertising, like on
Oh.
Twitter and stuff like that. And granted, that's not on the actual cards; it's just advertising material, which is different, I will say. Um, and but people don't really trust Hasbro because like they do this and then they have layoffs of people who are in certain art departments, and like you start putting all these pieces together, and it's like, yeah, well, maybe you won't put it on the cards, but you might start putting it in your materials for like D&D campaigns. Like we'll use AI generated art to generate like background scenery or whatever. Like there may be some merit to doing it in some circumstances, but if the entirety of your product is art based, which ultimately like D&D handbooks is art based, Magic the Gathering cards is like half art, half game design. In my mind, I think that in order to charge the premium that you do for that product, I think it probably needs to be done by humans. Because otherwise, like, what are you paying for? You're paying for stuff that a computer generated, slapped onto cheap cardboard, and you're trying to sell it to me for like $6 a pack. No, thank you. I I don't value we as a community don't really value it that way right now. So,
Mhm.
and if I'm Pokemon, I want to stay as far away from AI generated art as possible because the TCG is a cash cow for them, and you do not want to sully those waters where people all of a sudden start thinking your product is less valuable than it could be thought of. That's my thought.
It's like interesting to think about. Like, I'll just say I would absolutely hate if they start using AI on
Yeah.
Pokemon cards. Not a fan, don't want that. But like if you think about the majority of cards that are bought, like what was the number that we talked about a couple weeks ago? How many cards were bought in the last financial year or fiscal year?
Printed, there was like 30 billion or I don't know, some crazy
Or
number.
printed. So
Yeah.
we can assume that there is a large chunk of that gigantic number were bought, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, people buy things. A majority of sales are, like children,
Yeah.
right? So will even those kids won't care whether it's AI art or not. Like I don't think so it's like it's weird because I could see it going in a direction of that and I don't like it because I just browsed through the rules for the Illustrator contest. There's nothing that says in there no AI. So it's definitely illegal to have multiple entries, but in terms of submitting art created by I don't think was against their official rules to my understanding and quick look through. I could be wrong on that.
I mean,
So
I think
it's sticky.
you make a good point that I don't think the kids would necessarily notice or care, to be honest. I think if it's cute and if the Pokemon looks cute, I think the thing that Pokemon is going to have to struggle with, as are all companies that make art, is having AI baked into the tools that artists
Hmm.
use. So like Adobe, for example. Adobe has these new tools that use AI to do generative fill, to like smooth out things, to add in elements, to take elements away. technically all of that is AI, right? And
Yeah,
some
I
of it,
use the automatic selection to, like, when I need to cut out a student athlete from a photo, I use the automatic selection and then it picks out the person.
well, it helps you crop it, but does it fill in a background for you with things that weren't there?
I don't go that far.
Well, so that's my point. That's the AI I'm talking about, generative AI. So instead of just being like, I'm going to use AI to understand the borders of this object you're trying to cut out, saying I'm going to use AI to like add things that were never there beforehand.
Hmm.
But there's a part of me that says like, I do think that that as a tool, as an aid, is perfectly fine. Like, I don't think that like if I were going to draw an amazing Eevee and I created a background, I could see Ultra Pro, for instance, using AI to make better backgrounds to stick their PNG files on.
Oh my God. You know what? Maybe they should do that,
It
please.
might, and honestly, it might be better than
It
some of
might
the stuff
actually
they've
be
given
better.
us.
Yeah, like
You
it
know.
might actually be better.
But like, and so I think that that kind of AI might creep its way into a lot of mediums. But again, I think Pokemon cards, even if kids may not notice, I think there's like an integrity piece that's like, what are you actually buying? You're buying art and you're buying ideas. That's all you're buying, really. The fact that it's printed onto cardboard, that's a medium. That's just a medium. And if
Mhm.
TCG Pocket is anything, TCG Pocket says that Pokemon doesn't even think the medium of cardboard is necessarily that important.
Exactly.
So if all you have is the art and the idea, you got to maintain that integrity. That's my, I would have a firm stance if I worked at the Pokemon company. And look, I can't say for sure. I don't know how companies and people in Japan think about AI art. This might be a cultural difference too. I know in America, a lot of people are very much against AI art for this type of use. But in Japan, I don't know. We do know that Japanese culture has tended to lean into certain aspects of technology more, but in other aspects they are, not as, interested. So I don't know if anybody out there that's listening kind of has a better finger on the pulse of Japanese culture. Let us know. Like, is AI art a hot button topic in Japan, or are people just unconcerned?
Mhm.
Curious.
I think. Well, I know that. I know that recently in Japan, there was a big singer. She was a singer of a big anime. I'm forgetting what it is off the top of my head, but she was gonna do this like show or production or event that was ended up being promoted through AI art, and because of that, she backed out of it. She said, "You know what? I'm not attending this anymore." So I think in terms of like culture, like I think it's pretty similar to here, to where people like some people love it and some people use it, and then a lot of people hate it.
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of in that sense, but it just depends on what side of the coin that Pokemon wants to go to.
Yeah. I don't know. My
Because I
gut
think
says
they'll
they're
be
gonna.
successful either way.
Maybe. I mean, from a corporate perspective, maybe. If I'm Pokemon, though,
Mhm.
at least in the products that I make directly, whether or not you allow people to use AI if you license IP, that's kind of up to them, I suppose. But for the products that I make directly, if I'm Pokemon, I stay as far away from that as possible. You make more than enough money to pay artists. If any
Mhm.
company in the world makes enough money to pay people, it's Pokemon. So.
And they still sell the Ultra Pro mats.
Yeah, well, see, there you go. That's the licensing. They can use AI.
Whatever.
But
But that's going to be all with the AI topics here for you. Let's go into the interview that we've got for you. Justin joining us. Very
Yep.
excited to show you all this. It's a very good interview. I've listened to it and can't wait to see you back here.
All right. Well, hello. So today we have Justin Basil. I'm saying it correctly now.
You are saying it correctly.
I never know. I'm like, is it Basil? Is it Basil? And I'm
So
like,
actually, ironically, originally when I crafted this name, it was Basil.
Oh.
And I've mentioned this before, but I don't care either way.
yeah.
So it's Basil for
It's-
American audience. If you're American, call it Basil. I don't care.
I will say
Everybody
the
else-
deep lore is Basil. So we're gonna have a whole community. It's like GIF and GIF.
Yeah.
You're gonna have the Basil community.
Yeah, I mean, it's also like a dialectical thing, so it's
Yeah.
it's whatever. I'm
But
not
yes.
that concerned about it.
This is the person behind Justin Basil, the website that we at the Metapod use quite regularly, particularly when new sets are releasing. Yeah. You are our go-to site for card translations, for set reveals, and all that stuff.
For sure.
But, I mean, that's the things that people know who listen to the pod, but give us a little bit of a background about yourself, just a quick little intro for the people.
So I first started playing the Pokemon trading card game as a kid. I went to the local Toys R Us leagues. Well, a league, not leagues, plural. I wish it'd been more than one. My parents got me to the one. I'll be happy about that. I played there. I played like my most memorable deck that I played was like the coin flip executor. That was amazingly fun as a kid. Just flipping all the coins. And somehow I didn't get energy removed into oblivion, but it worked. When that shut down, I kind of fell out of Pokemon for a while. I came back into Pokemon around Forbidden Light.
Okay.
So Forbidden Light's pre-release was my first event back. I kind of started getting cards again around Burning Shadows, but it wasn't until Forbidden Light where I actually came back, and then started playing. And then from that point, I kind of shifted a little bit. It was until about Team Up-ish that I was playing, and then I kind of started helping out as a professor at the league, just helping people build their first decks, teaching them how to play. And I had so many people that I needed to help build decks because there was an explosion then too, just like now, of new players. And so I ended up creating this deck building guide in PDF form. And I thought, okay, I'll just use this and share this with whoever needs it at the league if I can't help them, right? It's just so they can have something that they can go off of. And it's like, maybe other people need this. So I shared it on Reddit, and of course the immediate reaction when I shared it, because I uploaded it to Mediafire, was like, this site sucks, and it does. Let's be honest, it does suck. But it was how I shared it, and so I was like, okay, fine, whatever. So I was like, screw it, I'll get a Squarespace site, I'll dump it on a blog post on Squarespace, and they can download it that way. And then the feedback was, well, this isn't very mobile friendly, and it wasn't. So I started
never happy. It's like I created a resource.
Well, to be fair, I mean, look what's coming out of it.
Yeah,
but,
true.
So I started tearing pieces of the deck building guide out into more web-friendly forms, and now instead of just being a deck building guide, which is honestly one of the smaller parts of the site now, there's everything else on justinbasil.com. I've kind of just everything that I was tracking anyway, I just started dumping on my site because I'm not the only one that cares. So I would keep track of what's coming out, so I started putting it on the site.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty clear transition to be okay, I'm a professor. I want to help the people locally.
Yep.
This feels like a useful resource, so I'll share it with everybody. But
might as well.
I will say the level of commitment, though, because it does sound like rags to riches is not the correct way to frame it, but it's a very small start to be I have a PDF.
Yep.
And now it's I run a website.
I do run a website.
And the website provides information about decks, archetypes, and also, updated card translations.
Proxies.
Proxies. Yep. So it's kind of ballooned in scope.
It has. It's gotten a lot bigger since I started it, but it's fine. I'm keeping up with it still. On Twitter, if you guys follow me on Twitter, you notice I post the weekly meta updates every week, and kind of look at the top 8 in every tournament that's been online and local and in person, and analyze that data and post, what did best over the last 2 weeks, and that's what it is.
I will say our local league TO is always resharing those top 8 lists, so it's always useful for us too. So, but yeah, I mean that's sort of the website angle. I know recently-ish you started working with Water Pokemon Master from Poke Beach.
Recently-ish.
Ish
is the emphasized part there.
Yeah.
So it would have been probably around Darkness Ablaze.
Okay.
So fairly early on in Sword and Shield, I started working with him on card reveals. So I'd help him every time in the morning there would be a card reveal. I'd either work with the translator or use my tools to translate whatever card was revealed, and then post reveals for Poke Beach.
Yeah.
And I've done that since.
Yeah. And then how long ago did you, because you have a podcast, so shout out for...
Yes, the Poke Beach podcast.
The Poke Beach, the thing is, if you like all the news that we talk about, but you want it from the people who know the most about the news, to be frank, Poke Beach podcast.
Yeah, and the people who argue about it the most.
Yes.
you heard us last night.
Yes,
you heard us last night.
We were all hanging out last night, and it was a very spirited discussion.
Spirited, yes, but we don't hate each other.
No, they don't.
Emphasize. No, so Poke Beach podcast. We started that I think September-ish last year.
Okay.
So it's fairly recent, but yeah, that was
Yep.
That's been fun, honestly. And John and I, despite the jokes, we do like each other and we get along just fine.
No, it was fun hearing both of you sort of discuss things because it's in terms of like I'll just give the listeners and the viewers some context in terms of having access to like information about upcoming cards, upcoming sets, between what's newly coming out and then also Water Pokemon Master John's deep knowledge.
He has a lot of history.
Yeah, a lot of history. It does make it for a really interesting discussion.
Yeah.
I find. So, yeah.
And of course, both of us want to see patterns in everything.
Yes.
So, yeah.
So, what initially got you connected with the Poke Beach site? And
So he actually reached out to me. I'm not sure how he heard about me, but he reached out to me through Reddit or actually no, I think he saw me on Reddit and reached out to me through his site, actually is what it was. And he was like, hey, would you be interested? And I was like, sure. I don't see why not. I mean, so I did. That was literally it. Like, it wasn't nothing.
No special
nothing
sauce,
no,
nothing
so
like
I was
that.
like, sure. And so he wanted to talk to me and kind of meet me. So we had a Discord call and we talked for probably about 30, 45 minutes and hit it off. And you saw how chummy we were with each other yesterday. It felt like that right from the get-go for us. It was just immediately friends.
Now, I will say, I thought I heard yesterday, was this event the first time you've met each other in person?
It is. We've worked together for several years now and have never met in person until...
So Jake, if you're seeing this, no excuses.
Yeah. So it had been a long time we'd been working together and had not met still, but now we've met. So.
All right. So I mean, that's just sort of a background, what you do. I think people will enjoy like hearing that, given how much it's good to put a face and a person behind a site, behind the work. Outside of that, though, you've been working sort of in the background on a new alternate format. Do you want to give the folks an idea of what that is?
So I've been developing this for about 2 years now. It's called the Eternal format. Basically, the idea is, Pokemon has the Unlimited format. And the Unlimited format does exist as a sanctionable format. The problem with Unlimited, though, is that basically everything is like an OTK deck. Everything. You either win on the first turn, or you lose. And like most often, the coin flip determines who wins. So the idea is, what if we had this cool card pool? We have cards from the entire history of the trading card game. And if we took away the problem cards, there was a ban list and a couple smaller deck building rules to fix some stuff. And then that was the format. And so you have cards from the original base set all the way up through, like right now, Twilight Masquerade, that are part of this format.
That's cool.
And they're really fun to play. It's a really, really fun format to play.
How would you describe like the feel of the format? Because I know Expanded is probably the closest thing that some people. I mean, I really haven't ever played Expanded personally.
I've played quite a bit of it.
But like, that's probably the closest thing people might have in their mind. Maybe Gym Leader Challenge in respect that like you have older card access. How does the Eternal format sort of play? Clearly, it's not. Hopefully, not OTK because that's what you're trying to avoid.
There's no OTK. So the best way I can describe it is imagine if you weren't quite so restricted in Standard, but the format weren't completely cancerous like Expanded currently is.
Yeah.
Like Expanded can be fixed pretty easily, but they haven't been working on it in a while, even in Japan. But I think it's just like a really rich format. You're gonna play it later today. I think you'll get a feel for it. But like there's all sorts of variants in terms of how decks are constructed, how decks intend to build. You still have evolution decks that are succeeding in that format, and even some of the best ones do evolve. There are alternate win conditions. There's control, there's stall, there's mill, there's still aggro. Like they all exist, and it's all in one format, and it's still healthy that they can coexist in a good way. And because there are so many tools available to you, a certain control archetype might do really, really well, but they're also quite counterable. And so you have that flexibility, not only in deck building, but also in gameplay.
So if somebody were to be interested in playing Eternal format, not just plugging your website here, but do you have like basic rules, guides, and proxies?
justinbasil.com/eternal.
Okay. And you have like a proxies that people can print?
So you just print proxies out of...
Limitless, probably.
Limitless to a degree.
Yeah.
Limitless only goes back to Heart Gold and Soul Silver. So if you go to pkmncards.com, you can find the rest of the cards, and that's where you pull those. And then if you go to any of the proxy things on my page, like if you go to like proxies for Twilight Masquerade, there's always a link to what I call the PowerPoint method, where you can just drop images into a PowerPoint that's like, it automatically resizes them for you, so you can get 9 to a page, and you can do it that way. That's how I usually print my proxies.
It's funny, I've actually been using your PowerPoint tool. I'm developing another card game just separately, not like a trading card game, but like, and it's been very useful because I'm
It's
like,
super helpful.
it sizes everything, and you print it easy. So, I think I will say it's another thing, because when you think about older formats, Pokemon is, I would say, I think it's unfortunate that they don't enjoy or want to print older cards.
I mean, I understand it, but at the same time, like, it's frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, because like there are formats, right? Like you have, they do have expanded. Like you said, technically unlimited is sanctionable. And I think the Pokemon Company is also leaning more and more into GLC.
So, yes and no. It's a what do they call it? Alternative play style. They basically call it expanded with extra rules.
Yeah,
which is not a great characterization of the format.
No, but it's one of those things where, like, I think the Pokemon Company, they clearly recognize that other formats are of interest. Now we're getting into just some thoughts. One, why do you think it is that the Pokemon Company is hesitant to follow the lead of companies like Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Wizards of the Coast, who, you know, semi-regularly do reprint sets or include reprints of older cards, even if they're not meant to be legal and standard?
Pokemon is hesitant to print anything that isn't standard legal, and I think it's just because the new stuff is what sells the most. Even with regard to expanded, which is a format people still enjoy. A lot of people just aren't interested in that card pool because they're afraid of the format. They're afraid of the big, scary amount of cards that are in there, and then they don't want to try to tackle that. And for a lot of players, something like Standard is safe because it is such a narrow card pool compared to Expanded or even Eternal. Eternal is a huge card pool. It scares people sometimes. I've heard a number of times, like, I mean, Eternal is kind of interesting, but I don't know the card pool.
Yeah.
I was like, that's cool. You don't need to know the card pool. Just start somewhere and have fun with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the best comparison I have is Commander, right?
Yeah.
Commander is effectively, it's like an aspect of Eternal for Magic the Gathering. Now, you only need one version of each card, but the card pool for that is, 30,000 cards.
It's huge, yeah.
So, but, when you say the number 30,000 and you immediately go, that's impossible. Well, the reality is only 1,000 of those cards are good.
Yeah.
Most of it is draft chaff, or whatever, right? And I think Pokemon's probably very similar.
So Pokemon's card pool for Eternal format is roughly 15,000 cards.
Yeah.
It's about half that size. But I would say it's more than about 1,000 cards that are usable in there. It's actually quite good.
But again, you think to yourself, okay, if there's like 1,000, 1,500, whatever that number is, that's still just 10%. Yeah. So again, the big number is daunting, but, and I will say, actually, this is a good question. Magic, if you think about like their length of history,
sure,
people are always like power creep, power creep, power creep. Where does Pokemon lean into that notion? Since you have some knowledge of older cards, where is it true that there's power creep in the Pokemon card pool, and what kinds of cards do you think don't fit that mold?
So I will just note 2 specific instances where there were massive increases in power level. One was the release of Mewtwo EX with the whole X-Ball thing. That was a massive jump in power level. And then the most egregious one, I think, of them all was the release of Team Up with Pikarom. Pikarom and the rest of the tag teams drastically warped the entire fabric of the game. And VMAXs were the company's attempt to try to start reeling that in, and even that didn't quite succeed.
Yeah.
So they had to go with V-Stars and now EXs. And while it is starting to slow down a little bit, there's still that notion that, okay, well, this is a really powerful card. Now it's only 2 prize cards. It's like, yeah, but like, better that it be 2 prize cards than 3.
Yeah, I mean, because it's like, I'd rather make a very powerful 2-prizer, and then at least I can get 3 attacks off in a game.
Yeah.
As opposed to my opponent just wins in 2 attacks, and I'm like, well, dang, I went second.
Hey, I hit you with Poltergeist, and your Urshifu is now gone, and let me do it again.
Yeah. It does feel kind of rough in certain instances. I do think that the 3 prize mechanic was a mistake
Yeah, I think so
by
too.
Pokemon because it's too fast.
It is too fast, and it's not necessarily that the three prizes couldn't ever exist. I think the healthiest instance of three prizers is actually the Pokemon V Union. So even stuff like Mewtwo V Union, I think those are perfectly healthy. Obviously, they didn't see a ton of play, but they did see play, and they were still good, but they required a lot of extra effort to get out, and they were quite powerful because of it.
Yeah.
But stuff like Pikarom, where it's like, here is every card you possibly need, and because you don't have to worry about evolving ever, you get a ton of extra consistency.
Yeah.
And that's really, really hard on the game.
Yeah, that's true. The V Union thing, I think it would have seen more play in an era that didn't have tag teams, that didn't have V Maxes, you know?
Yeah.
Because, you know, you're sitting here like, well, I can just go get a stage 1 and evolve and basically get almost the same value. Or I can throw all of these in the discard and then, you know, Exodia style put them all together.
To be fair, I don't know if you guys saw that. Well, you probably saw it. TCGO before it died. Rest in peace. The animation when it came together, all the V Unions.
Yes, it was
Loved
it was wonderful.
It was beautiful.
So we've talked about, you know, some history. We've talked about the Eternal format. Trying to think now. Maybe we'll edit this part a little bit. I'm just trying to think of like what else. I mean, we were having a pretty interesting discussion last night about about some speculation.
Yeah.
Would you like to do a speculation segment?
Sure.
Sure.
Sure. Let's speculate.
Okay, so
I guess you'll take John's side. So, so currently we know about we know a decent number of Japanese set names at least. So we just saw recently the trademarks for the Glory of Team Rocket.
Yep.
And Stellar Festival.
Yep.
So there's the two new trademarks that we saw. The speculation, and this is speculation, is that Stellar Festival will probably be the end of your wrap-up set for Japan. Traditionally, those sets are mostly reprints. They'll have some new arts. A lot of times that's how Japan will get our pre-release promos. So our pre-release arts will be in that set for them. That's so they can get those arts. They'll get, like a lot of the alternate art tin promos or deck promos that we get. A lot of those will be in there. And then there'll be some other arts that we just haven't gotten yet. And
those are like their shiny specialty sets, right?
They're the specialty sets. So that's where we get like all of our shiny Pokemon or all of the trainer gallery or like Crown Zenith, like the whole Bidoof artwork kind of thing. All that stuff generally comes from those end of year sets. And so basically I'm saying Stellar Festival is probably that set for Japan. So we would take whatever is new from there, from the core set, which are probably like maybe 15 cards, 20 cards tops. And then we'll combine that with the new EX decks they're releasing toward the end of the year. And that would be like the base of our January mini set, right? And then we take all the specialty cards from that Stellar set and put it in, and that would be like the fancy cards for that set.
Yeah.
Fine, right? And then theoretically, at least, the Glory of Team Rocket would be our March set, which would be our first set for the year.
Yep. So, like you said, we have the Glory of Team Rocket trademark. That almost certainly means there will be some sort of a Team Rocket themed set. So knowing that, they always release a new mechanic at the beginning of, generally speaking, the last few years, at the beginning of every year, there's a new little gimmick. One year it was V-Stars. Sometimes it's a big deal that like defines a whole era.
Yeah.
But I don't think we're in that window. Probably not. So this is probably going to be the holdover mechanic.
Right, to tie us over. Yeah.
So there was some discussion of like, and maybe we timestamp this, commenters like, hold us accountable, folks in Discord, if we get this right or wrong. The theory is either it's dark type, not dark type, but like
dark
Pokemon like Dark Charizard, Dark whatever. Or
owner's Pokemon, so stuff like Rockets something.
Yep. So like
and it could be both too. It could very well be both.
I mean, yeah, very well, because you could have Rockets this, and you could also, maybe they lean into the Gym Leader era as well, so you get some Gym Leaders Pokemon. And I do think people did like, do you remember like the character rares that they did in Cosmic Eclipse? Where you had like the trainer plus...
Yeah, my only one that I didn't like was Steelix.
Yeah.
Because that Jasmine looked awful. I love Jasmine. She's like my second favorite gym leader, and that art was abysmal. I don't know if you've noticed, but that artist has never been invited back.
Oh, no. Okay.
So, just saying.
But like, to your point, they might do both. And we did get a Dark Sylveon as a promo. Technically, there has been a dark Pokemon printed.
There has. Okay, but that's a promo. And
Yeah,
they
it's
didn't
really
get it,
weird.
They also didn't get it in Japan.
Yeah, it's true. It was just kind of like
So-
somebody at the Pokemon Company International just absolutely went off the rails.
How
But-
often does that happen? We'll find out, I guess.
So, it could be both. I think I would actually prefer to see the owner's Pokemon mechanic because I think it also prevents unexpected evolution lines.
Yeah.
Because like
I mean, Dark does too, because it's still
yeah,
part of
true.
the name.
That's true. It's part of the name. But like, yeah, I like that because I also think to myself the illustration rares and special illustration rares
Right.
in an owner's Pokemon mechanic would just look amazing.
Oh, they would. And that's something I would be really excited about. Part of the reason I'm thinking, or leaning at least more toward owner's Pokemon being the potential gimmick is, like, Dark Pokemon, do people really want, like, a whole year of Dark Pokemon?
Yeah. It's a bit, I mean, maybe if they bring back light Pokemon too,
But even then, like, is that really something that they would want?
Yeah.
Maybe. But how are they going to treat these Dark Pokemon? I mean, if they're very popular, very common in the set, they would kind of burn themselves out pretty quickly. Whereas with owner's Pokemon, you know, maybe Rocket's the first set, and then like we were talking about earlier, the gym leaders, you know, they could do a set with like Kanto, another set with Johto, another set with Hoenn, Sinnoh, like,
Yeah.
then our sets would merge, and we'd basically have a whole year of gym leaders Pokemon, right?
Yeah.
And our first set in March could literally be a Rocket and Kanto gym leaders. Like, that could be our first set. I'm not saying it is.
Yeah.
It could be. It's theoretically a possibility.
I'm just thinking about it now, and we just got Ancient and Future in terms of, you know, a mechanic typing.
Right.
And to me, like, it's going to be a weird phrase. I think that mechanic typing is a kissing cousin to Dark and Light Pokemon, because from a TCG design perspective, you would design then cards that support Dark Blank and Light
See,
Blank.
to me, they feel very much a retread of the Battle Styles mechanic.
Yeah, they could also very well do
Which,
that.
while fine, I think Battle Styles was able to be a lot more flexible because there was no tie-in with the game on what they needed to be. So, like, you know, you have Octillery, and Octillery isn't a rapid strike Pokemon in the video games. They just designed it that label and called it good.
Yeah.
But, like, with the Ancient and Future Pokemon, they do have that designation in the
That's
games.
true.
So there's only so much they can do with them.
Yeah, but to me though, like you have an Ancient and Future, and then if you were to add in there a similar duality of Ancient and Future, now we've got Dark and Light, and it just feels like it, in my mind, is an overcomplicated addition to a card pool. Whereas if you did Owner's Pokemon, you don't have to have that same dual theming constantly.
Another thing with the Dark and Light too, if they did do Dark and Light, like, we just got the dual tags.
Yeah.
With the Ancient and Future. Like, are they going to do that twice in a row?
Exactly.
Like,
And then you could then print cards that are trainers specific to owners, maybe.
Yep,
As
sure
a thing,
could.
and you can make them really powerful, knowing that they're only going to work for like 2 cards.
hey, and if they only work for 2 cards, it's really nice to not break the game in that way.
Yeah, like Fusion Strike Mew. That didn't break the game at all.
No, that didn't bend the entire format for the entire time it was in the
Oh
game.
Lord. Well, I think that's it for this one, but we kind of went on a long journey.
Yeah, for
But that's sort of the path here at NAIC.
Yes.
If you're wondering what little booth we're in, we are at NAIC right now. For sure. But this will probably be going up when we get back. And thank you so much for joining, for having all of these speculative conversations.
Thank you for having me.
And back over to Jake and me in the future.
And welcome back to the Metapod Podcast, the Pokemon podcast that revolves around the evolving meta. Thank you so much for tuning into that interview. Thank you. Appreciate it. Hopefully you got your NAIC Teal Mask Ogre Pond codes. The code is not available to pick up anymore, so you missed it. But don't worry, next week we've got a ton of cool things to talk about. Some official stuff that has come out, and then also some run of the rumor mill, if that makes sense. So thank you again so much for listening. I'm Jake, that's Sean, and we'll see you next week on the Metapod.